Thank you, sir. Could I now invite Dr. Salah Kombaz to make an intervention? Dr. Kombaz is the AWADA Foundation board member and also the president of the Saudi Arabia Sports Medicine Association and the Saudi Anti-Doping Committee. Thank you, Doctor.
Thank you, Mr. President. On behalf of Saudi Arabian NADOs, I would like to congratulate WADA and code drafting team for their open, transparent, and broad consultation. We believe that this is a strong code that reflects current sport landscape. Sport is a multi-billion dollars industry. The reward for athletes are increasing. With the increased reward comes the increased temptation to cheat. That is why we support the increase in the sanction to 4 years. We support increased focus on the entourage and the need to be more intelligent in our testing program. This includes investigation. We also support the increased emphasis on education. We are pleased to see prevention is mandatory as the real deterrence through effective education in sport and schools. We are also pleased to see emphasis on the regional anti-doping organization as they are crucial for development nation to ensure all countries are educating and testing. This promotes the global level playing field. Finally, as I mentioned early, sport is multi-billion-dollar industry. Because of this, we need to invest more recourse in the fighting against doping in sport. This is not the time of reduce, this is the time to make it more strong. Fight through more involvement of government, equal partnership with the sport and National Olympic Committee. On behalf of Saudi Arabian NADO, we are fully support the revised code. Mr. President, Mr. Fahy, thank you for your leadership over the past 6 years. Thank you for support, and we wish you a very best, you and your family. Also, I would thank South African government for great organizing this conference. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Kombaz. We now turn to our host minister from South Africa, Minister Mbalula. And of course, he is an executive committee member of WADA and a member of the Foundation Board and Minister for Sport here in South Africa. Minister?
Thank you, President. South Africa reaffirms its commitment to the fight against doping in sport. We fully support the way forward in the fight against doping in sport through the adoption of the 2015 World Anti-Doping Code and its 5 international standards. The code provides the framework for harmonized anti-doping policies, rules, and regulations. This is of utmost necessity for the fight against doping within sport organizations and among public authorities. The code is a powerful tool in our collective efforts to eradicate doping in sport and to ensure that all procedures, rules, and policies necessary in the area of testing, laboratories, therapeutic use exemptions, the list of prohibited substances and methods, and for the protection of privacy and personal information are harmonized across all countries and sports. South Africa believes that a long-term solution to prevent doping is through effective scientific research dedicated to developing new and improved detection methods for prohibited substances and methods. We also fully support the improvement of evidence-based doping prevention strategies through social science research and believe that value-based education programs are an effective tool towards fostering anti-doping behaviors and creating a strong anti-doping culture. It is a great honor and privilege for Africa in general and South Africa in particular to be afforded this rare opportunity to host a conference of this magnitude and to instill the culture of anti-doping in all its citizens and sports people. The conference will provide South Africans and Africans with an opportunity and platform to increase and harmonize their efforts in the fight against doping in sport and in the promotion of fair play. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister. I now call on the Minister for Sport for the Ivory Coast and Chair of the African Union Conference of Ministers of Sport, Minister Alain Lobagnon.
Mr. President, President of WADA, distinguished guests, according to your rank, titles and qualifications, ladies and gentlemen, as Minister for the Promotion of Youth, Sports and Recreation of Ivory Coast and as President, Acting President of the African Conference of the Ministers of Sport of the African Union, may I be permitted to express here all the recognition and thanks on behalf of the Ministers of Sports of the African Union and of that of Ivory Coast. Thank the South African authorities for having convened and hosting this conference, the 4th World Conference on Doping here. Doping as illegal use of substances to performance-enhancing purposes is something that has to be combated in all ways. In Abidjan, we are trying to give sport its rightful place in development policies. Our vigilance regarding doping has to be ready at all times. Sport is no longer just a game, it's become a business. Africa aims to show its worth and therefore has to be resolutely in this fight against doping. Fighting doping is a question of ethics. Sport has to be made a more moral endeavor by making everyone aware of the responsibilities, the governments, the athletes, the executives. But in fact, sport should be given its nobility of pastimes and be an area where athletes count only on their real and natural strength and not be led only by greed. We should have as a slogan, "Never more any doping in my team." An athlete, after finishing his or her sporting career, has to become or be a healthy citizen. So we have to protect the athletes. That means we have to protect youth, this life force for the development of our states. Ladies and gentlemen, all of us have to stand behind the code and the international standards. I note with satisfaction that all of us are committed to give them even more strength and vigor. And they only will have any value if they're actually implemented. So in our work, we have to make sure that our fight against doping becomes really efficient and effective. Only by acting together will we be successful. Creating anti-doping laboratories rests on the will and determination of all of us to eradicate doping in sports. And this is entirely to WADA's credit. I'd like to take this opportunity to request that a third laboratory be set up in Western Africa, in Côte d'Ivoire, where the feasibility studies have been completed and are supported by an architectural project which is also ready. It also is an opportunity for me to thank sincerely WADA and the entire sports world and community for having given Côte d'Ivoire the honor of sitting on the new WADA Foundation Board. This will only strengthen our determination to fight in all areas against doping. Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to conclude by saying that I appeal here to all states be committed to this fight against doping so that none of the African athletes ever be tested positive again. It's in favor of a healthy and sound practice of sport, and it's also in the interest of public health. We have to have as a leitmotif zero doping, and I know that we can, and we must succeed. We will succeed. I'd like to wish the best of success to this 4th World Conference of the World Anti-Doping Agency. Long live dope-free sport. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister. I now invite the State Secretary for Finland, Mr. Jarmo Linden, to make an intercession.
Thank you, Mr. President, ladies and gentlemen, dear friends. I wish to extend my warmest thanks to our South African host for their hospitality and all the smooth arrangement. It is an honor to be here. Furthermore, our sincere thanks to WADA for organizing this conference and for their thorough work in drafting the code. We value in particular the constructive dialogue that took place between the various stakeholders. Finland's participation in this work involves both European cooperation and national comments on the drafting, which have been drawn up in a good spirit of collaboration with FINADA, the sport movement and the responsible ministry. The strengths in the new code lie in its flexibility and its focus on exposing and sanctioning real cheaters, entrusting responsibility on the members of the athlete entourage. It is good to see that the rights of athletes are now taken into account better than before. It is our responsibility to respect, protect and promote human rights based on international legislation. Finland hopes that anti-doping efforts can now focus more on performance-enhancing substances and methods. This is one of the core functions of anti-doping activities, and by allocating resources for this purpose, we can achieve efficiency in testing procedures. We welcome the fact that intelligent testing and the introduction of instruments are seen as priorities. Diversification, testing pools of a convenient size and quality control all lead to higher efficiency. Less is more. We see that more advanced investigative methods must be developed in close collaboration with the authorities, and due attention must be given to the role that each party plays. By the same token, campaigns involving anti-doping awareness and education together with research are instrumental in anti-doping policy making. In the research field, there is demand especially for high-quality social research data. WADA has produced valuable work for over a decade now, resolutely protecting the integrity of sport. Global cooperation calls for governments and the sport movement to work together with WADA to make sure that all signatories to the World Anti-Doping Code are compliant and that all athletes are treated equally. Finland's contribution to the fight against doping consists of not only the WADA country contribution, but also voluntary funding for the UNESCO Fund for the Elimination of Doping in Sport, as well as 3 million euros to the National Anti-Doping Committee. We pledged to enforce the new code too, and to help implement clear sport both nationally and internationally. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. The next contribution will be made by the Honourable Minister for Sports and Physical Education of the Republic of Congo, Dr. Leon Alfred Oppenbar. Thank you, sir.
Monsieur le Président,
President, ladies and gentlemen, I am indeed Dr. Okimba, Minister for Sport and Physical Education of the Republic of Congo. My government, which I have the honor of representing here in this beautiful country, would like, first of all, to thank the government of South Africa for its warm welcome and for making all the requisite facilities available for this event. We would like to thank WADA for the work it has been doing for the past 10 years to ensure that sport becomes clean and competitions are fair. The Republic of Congo has completed ratification of the UNESCO Convention to eliminate doping in sports on the 16th September 2013. And of course, we would like not only to support, but also to join this movement, which consists in revising the World Anti-Doping Code. This should enable the sporting movement, governments, and all partners in sports to join efforts and resolutely work to achieve a clean, equitable sports. Our commitment in favor of the application of the relevant decisions, which will be enshrined here, is based on the fact that we are fully available. We want there to be a more efficient cooperation between the various parties involved in the combat against doping. Measures should become binding. This will enable us to attain the goals sought. I therefore wish to say that my country, the Republic of Congo, will be welcoming Brazzaville in 2015, the 11th African Games. It will be the 50th anniversary, for the first games were organized in 1965 in Brazzaville again. Therefore, we are paying very special attention to the adopting of the World Anti-Doping Code as revised. For these measures will guarantee protection against doping and will enable athletes competing at this major event bringing together the African youth to achieve fair and clean performances. We want to consolidate what we have achieved in terms of the athlete's biological passport. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you. I now invite the Vice Minister of Sports of the Dominican Republic, Dr. Marcos Diaz, to address the conference.
Thank you, Mr. President. Saludos.
Dear WADA members, representatives of governments and sports movements, special guests, good evening. On behalf of the government of the Dominican Republic, I would like to congratulate WADA on the successful process of revision and consultation on the Code and International Standards, which has been a process which has been conducted over the last 2 years. We would also like to congratulate and thank WADA on the outstanding work done through its regional office for Latin America located in Uruguay. The support provided by this regional office is vital for the proper structuring and functioning of national and regional anti-doping organizations in our countries. In our case, as we are currently undergoing a process of in-house restructuring with greater involvement and commitment on the part of the government, the report of the regional office has provided us with key guidance in this new process, which will guarantee success in the global fight against the scourge of doping. The Dominican Republic is the country that exports the largest number of professional baseball players for the Major League Baseball. And as this sport is linked to a growing commercial industry, we have tremendous challenges in terms of the ethical integrity of this sport. In light of this commitment, we are working to create a new national anti-doping organization which will enable us to carry our weight in the efforts and initiatives taken by WADA around the world. Our country was recently elected to the vice presidency of the Conference of Parties to the UNESCO International Convention Against Doping in Sports, representing in particular the Latin American and Caribbean group. I should like to take this opportunity to underscore the fact that the region is conducting a large number of educational projects approved by the UNESCO Fund. We are encouraging our Latin American countries to continue supporting the work and commitment of governments and sporting movements with a view to rolling out educational anti-doping projects. Indeed, these projects are the fruit of joint work with UNESCO and the Regional Office of WADA. I'd like to thank, on behalf of the Spanish-speaking countries, the government of Spain and the member countries of CONSUDE, chaired by the government of Uruguay, for providing us with a Spanish translation of the new anti-doping code and standards I'd like to underscore the fact that this cooperation will provide for a greater, more effective implementation in all Spanish-speaking countries of this new code. We hope this initiative will be followed by other countries for the benefit of countries around the world that use other languages. Finally, we would like to thank the South African government and its people for having extended such a warm welcome. Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker will be the Minister for Youth and Sport in Serbia, Mr. Vanja Udovičić.
Okay. My name is Vanja Udovičić. Dear Chairman, conference participants, ladies and gentlemen. First, I want to tell that it's too much easier to play final game of Olympic Games instead to have a public speech here. It is my privilege and great honor to address you today as a Minister of Sports and Youth in the government of the Republic of Serbia. Participation of this conference is also a great personal pleasure of mine, because as a representative player of the sport in which my country is world renowned and well known, I am well aware of the problems with the doping and extremely important global mission and crucial role you have in the development of sports. I have supported the Anti-Doping Agency and its expert team throughout my career in sports. Today, as a minister, I regard this support as one of the biggest strategic tasks of the ministry, and that is why it is in the first 5 long-term priorities in the development of sports in Serbia. I unconditionally support the new position of the Anti-Doping Administration and Management System. That was, by the way, my first formal education on the recently assumed office of the Ministry of Sports and Youth. I am extremely pleased that our doctors have translated ADAMS and that consequently the Serbian language is one of the 16 official languages of ADAMS. Serbia is not a large country, but today, with the new leadership and political consensus to quickly catch up with the rest of the world in all the fields. These results are available because they are becoming a good example to follow in all other areas. In this context, I would like to point out the case of our tennis player, Viktor Troicki. My intention is not to start a discussion, but to point out a few important things as a human being and an athlete. All sports organizations, including the Anti-Doping Agency, are there for sports and athletes. We should abide by the rules. They are important too, but we cannot permit that because of the blind following of the principle, we make mistakes which cost us dearly, and we cannot permit that the principles remain unclear. The core of the problem is in the big misunderstanding, and that the procedure was not properly followed. Consequently, the potentially remarkable career and life of the young man have been significantly changed. From this place, I would like to give the largest possible support to the wider application of ADAMS and emphasize the importance of implementation of the Articles 7.8 on identifying of previous anti-doping violation and 14.5, which describes ADAMS as an information system which should be available where applicable to an athlete, National Anti-Doping Organization of the athlete, International Federation, as well as to other anti-doping organizations that can test an athlete. I am well aware of the discussion related to privacy protection at ADAMS, but I believe that the strict confidentiality and application of all international standards for privacy protection should be implemented by WADA with the supervision of relevant Canadian bodies as stated in the Article 14.5. I am convinced that ADAMS is the only system which could improve the efficiency of joint testing in order to avoid unnecessary retesting. ADAMS dissolves the difference between athletes and provides equal treatment for everybody. Finally, I would like to end this short address by commenting on the humorous tone of athletes when they say, anti-doping control in 8 o'clock in the morning. What a great way to start the day. I understand that. I plead and I wish for all the true athletes of the world to be provided with the equal condition for competing. In other words, stop doping in sports. I wish a successful work at this conference for all of you and the results which will benefit sports and athletes of the world. Cheers and thank you.
Thank you, sir. The next intervention will come from the Deputy Director General, Norwegian Ministry of Culture, Department of Sport Policy, Mr. Per Christian Asmundstad.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First of all, the Norwegian government would like to thank the World Anti-Doping Agency, Sport and Recreation South Africa, and the City of Johannesburg for organizing the World Conference on Doping in Sport. We have received a warm welcome here in Johannesburg. Mr. Chairman, the Norwegian government congratulates WADA for their significant contribution to the international fight against doping in sport, and thus for the protection of the clean athlete. The World Anti-Doping Code is the paramount instrument in the fight against doping in sport. Furthermore, the Norwegian government commends WADA on having undertaken a thorough and extensive revision process, which has resulted in the revised World Anti-Doping Code put forward here in Johannesburg. We are proud to say that we have taken part in a revision process that has been conducted in an open and inclusive manner. Openness and transparency is of vital importance in order to allow WADA to function as an effective anti-doping regulator. Norway, therefore, trusts that this process has been an inspiration for all stakeholders. The Norwegian government supports WADA's principle that athletes have a fundamental right to participate in doping-free sport. We hold the principle of fair play in high regard. We are pleased to observe that the latest code version refers to human rights. This is new, and we welcome it. The right to a fair trial and an independent and impartial hearing has been one of Norway's main points throughout the code revision process. To secure the athlete's rights, especially in connection with a positive rule violation and the legal process that follows, this is of utmost importance. In the fight against the systematic cheaters, we see a trend in the anti-doping work towards increased investigation and intelligence work. We note with satisfaction that the revised code has taken this into account. On finalizing the code revision process here in Johannesburg, the world will be presented with a modernized, updated code that will create a positive momentum and a revitalization of the important anti-doping work worldwide. Finally, Mr. Chairman, the Norwegian Ministry of Culture looks forward to the implementation of the new code and to continue our good collaboration with WADA and the anti-doping community worldwide. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you. The next intervention will come from Mr. David Kenworthy, who is the chairperson of the Institute of National Anti-Doping Organisations. Thank you, David.
Thank you, Chairman. The Institute of National Anti-Doping Organisations, INADO, is the member association of national anti-doping organisations. Every day, NADOs directly serve the vast majority of the world's clean athletes by rooting out supply, distribution, and use of prohibited substances in sport. INADO is going to make 7 brief points today. The first is that WADA must continue to develop as the global anti-doping regulator. Only WADA can set global anti-doping rules and monitor and enforce compliance with those rules. Only WADA can resolve issues between anti-doping organisations. WADA should not do for anti-doping organisations what they can do for themselves. Secondly, compliance with the World Anti-Doping Programme must now focus on operations and not just documents. It's not enough to have testing rules. Anti-doping organisations must demonstrate effective testing programmes. They must show that their results management is fair and robust. Their tribunals must impose code-compliant sanctions, eliminating the need for WADA to appeal lax penalties which neither discourage nor punish doping. Thirdly, but monitoring compliance should not and need not stifle innovation. Where creativity makes for a better anti-doping programme, it should be encouraged. Fourth, we must all do a better job in deterring doping and in understanding how to do so. Let's borrow from fields as divergent as health and criminology, to better understand human misbehaviour, how to prevent it in the first place, and how to stop it from reoccurring. We must give our clean athletes more confidence that their opponents are also clean. That requires more international cooperation between anti-doping organisations. Stronger NADOs should make a greater effort to partner those that are still developing. International federations and NADOs should more routinely share information and coordinate testing. RADOs should continue to support national programmes so that effective NADOs can emerge in their regions. Sixth, WADA's governance structure needs further development. NADOs, which conduct the bulk of anti-doping work worldwide, should have direct access to the WADA table. Without it, the WADA Foundation Board and EXCO are deprived of direct information and input from the largest group of practitioners. And finally, the 2015 Code and international standards are ambitious. Implementing them will be neither cheap nor easy. As WADA moves forward in making policies for all of us, we must redouble our vigilance on the costs and the practical implications of our anti-doping choices. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, David. Next is the Director General of the Federal Ministry of the Interior for Germany, Mr. Gerhard Baum.
Sehr geehrter Herr Präsident, sehr geehrter Herr Generaldirektor, sehr geehrte Damen und Herren! Wir sind hier zusammengekommen, um den neuen Welt-Anti-Doping-Code 2015 zu verabschieden. Ein weiterer Schritt.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Hat sich die Dopingbekämpfung trotz aller Medien.
We indeed commend the efforts being made to combat doping, and we feel that WADA was founded, the code was introduced in a large number of countries. Compliance has been checked. The UNESCO Convention has been ratified by 180 countries. The 2015 Code is a very positive step in the right direction. The federal government welcomes the amendments to the new code, and the revision process has revised the 2007 version. We are grateful to WADA for having constructively tended to the various proposals. These are major steps forward. Despite good cooperation, we still have a few problems, and I might highlight three of them. First of all, the World Anti-Doping Code is, of course, a legal instrument. Thanks to UNESCO, it also addresses governments which are accustomed to adding comments to the various amendments to ensure that everything is fully transparent. Problems of interpretation, therefore, could arise in terms of the anti-doping code. In the revision process, we have tried to clear up all these matters. Should WADA be a regulatory body? According to the rules, it should and must be both. Rules are important in anti-doping, and support is required for the implementation of measures. Of course, WADA has to explicit its own rules in terms of sanctions. If sanctions are stipulated by the World Code, they should be able to be implemented in a harmonious way around the world. A new sanction, publication of the sanction per se, is set out in 1013. Owing to the protection of personal data, sanctions can be published on the internet, which is not the case of all. Finally, one can wonder about whether these rules can be applied in a totally uniform way. We've explained to athletes that athletes in different countries must be subject to the same sanctions. Third point, the increasing of ineligibility to 4 years. While we understand and support WADA's intention to severely punish doping, we must also consider whether sanctions are appropriate, given the fact that many top athletes have short careers. We are concerned that courts will consider this severe sanction unreasonable in light of experience in Germany. In Europe, we have already started to implement the rules. The Council of Europe Monitoring Group has established a working group under the auspices of ENADO, which will work to develop proposals on the implementation of the WADA Code in close cooperation with WADA. Of course, these recommendations can be used worldwide. Transposing the WADA Code into national regulations is an important step. In addition, it will be more important to better ensure equal treatment of athletes worldwide. If we impose significant sanctions and if we impose significant obligations and severe sanctions on athletes, we must also ensure that everyone has to bear the same burden. The anti-doping world map still has many uncharted areas, and even active regions have very different approaches. It's time to give this issue more attention. This is a task for WADA, but also for IOC. I would finally like to thank WADA for its excellent work during the revision process. We have taken an important step forward towards improving anti-doping work. Implementation of the code will show whether we can reach our intended goals. And of course, we will continue to cooperate in partnership with WADA. We'll provide our unflagging support. And once again, I would like to thank the government of South Africa for the excellent organization of this meeting and its very warm welcome. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you. I now invite Mrs. Judith Joseph, who will speak on behalf of the Ministry of Sport for Trinidad and Tobago.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the panel, colleagues, media, ladies and gentlemen. The purpose of having conferences of this nature serves to remind us that it's only through a united front that the fight against doping in sport would bear fruit, of which the desired result is the eradication and riddance of the use and abuse of doping in sport. This conference, which focuses on this revised anti-doping code, undoubtedly shows that the World Anti-Doping Agency, WADA, continues to carry the torch of commitment in ensuring that all athletes, no matter from which part of the world they are located, can come together through fair play and clean sports. The play-through position must be adhered to, since the message must be sent and all athletes must believe that the opportunity for their individual successes rests in the system of true fair play. Paramount to this feeling is one that as an athlete, I offered my best, which was celebrated, and the parties that hold this position in their hands globally defend the view that all athletes must play true. The question may be asked, what else can be done? Well, there is always something to be done. For instance, by keeping up with testing for newer and innovative drugs and methods of detection. All our efforts should be extended in order to stay one step ahead. Therefore, we must invest our time and efforts to always level the playing field, being ever alert and vigilant. Additionally, athletes must be educated so that they see themselves as stakeholders in the fight against drugs and not as targets. In conclusion, the merit behind our global fortitude in the war against doping in sport has tremendous value, not only for the present, but for generations to come, whether you are located in the Northern Hemisphere, Southern Hemisphere, or the Caribbean, because the generations of athletes to come are depending on us to raise a united voice and continue to clasp our hands, encircling the globe, if only in spirit, to uphold clean and fair sport. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you. The next intervention will be from Mr. Haralampos Stylianou, who is the President of Cyprus Sport Organisation.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Dear delegates, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon, everybody. On behalf of the Cyprus government, I extend warm greetings to all of you participating in this historic anti-doping conference. We extend our warm thank you to the hosting country of Nelson Mandela. We declare our support and join forces in the fight against doping, in the fight for clean, fair, and true sport. Let me further congratulate the whole WADA team for the hard work carried out in putting together the new World Anti-Doping Code for 2015. Ladies and gentlemen, the recent scandals and other incidences, but also results of surveys, reconfirm that doping remains one of the greatest threats to integrity of sport, and consequently there is growing concern in the issue of corruption in sport. The protection of the integrity of sport is a continuous global challenge which requires cross-sectoral cooperation and action on EU and international level. Therefore, for those of us representing the public confidence of sports sector, the next challenge is to formulate appropriate responses aimed at minimizing the threat posed by the different and varying forms of doping. The collection, sharing, and exploitation of information and evidences about the supply and use of illegal substances and methods by athletes and the processing of personal data and its protection is a topic that is commonly discussed on EU level because of the proposed General Data Protection Regulation of the European Parliament and the Council. In formulating this legislation, the specificity of sport should not simply be taken into account, but probably dictate the final decisions on this matter. Any actions aiming to strengthen dispute resolution mechanisms in sports must ensure that they do not undermine sports people's rights as citizens, while recognizing that data protection is a fundamental right of athletes in the EU. At the same time, any new legislation cannot be seen to be encouraging athletes to use any illegal substances or refrain from participation in any sport meetings outside Europe. The question is there. Let us not find ourselves facing the dilemma: we either have privacy protection for athletes in Europe, and we all support human rights issues, or develop a real worldwide anti-doping platform for the protection of the vast majority of clean athletes. In my mind, we cannot have it both ways. Thank you for your attention.